Welcome in to our week 5 preview here on Pro Football Ireland. The unfamiliar first voice on the podcast with Mark Hogan starting it off for Jason Hayes and the guest, Daire Carragher. Michael, the fan favourite, of course, can't make it because we all know the week that we all just had, boys. It's been absolutely manic and it never stops for one Michael McQuaid, who has been brought elsewhere. Daire, I'm going to bring you in a second. But of course, Jason Hayes, my regular co-host here on the Pro Football Ireland preview show. Jason, we just came off this remarkable weekend, which of course we're going to talk about. If you lived on a desert island and you could be offered one thing, a Super Bowl experience or a Dublin game, which would it be?
I'm taking the Dublin game. I'm lucky enough to have experienced both. And what do we describe it as? It was, an All-Ireland final meets a Super Bowl. So it's the best of both worlds. What I really loved about the whole weekend, including in the game itself, is just how much the NFL embraced the Irish aspect of it, because we've all been to international games around Europe, Dara in South America, but I don't quite recall being to an international game that leaned so heavily into the host country's culture, and it was so much crack.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it a bit here because we actually haven't. And listening to some podcasts that had maybe the broadcasters or the podcasters over has been one of my favorite hangover cures that I've ever had now over the last few days, checking in with people. And we were so lucky that I suppose there was so much investment committed from all of the media outlets that wanted to cover it up. Daire, of course, you were able to come down as we switch over to a nice graphic if you're watching here on YouTube. Daire, this picture was taken on Friday night of you at the Pro Football Ireland podcast. Good to see you again.
I have no memory of that picture being taken, but thanks, Mark. I don't know if this counts first off as a promotion for me from the college football podcast, or maybe even a relegation from me and Connor's illustrious work we've been putting in on the collegiate front this year. But no, yeah, it was a great weekend. Obviously, I mean, as you say, listening to the Americans who came over, the overall reception of the game seemed to be remarkably positive, which I think that we get guilty for looking forward to what's next and what's next all the time. But it does seem like what we're looking forward to now is we want to secure this kind of one game per year contract that looks like it's on pace to come about, if not next year, maybe in the year after that or further on. Thanks for changing the graphic, by the way, Mark. No, but look, as Jason said, I've been fortunate enough to experience a lot of cool kind of neutral site games, such as Super Bowls and obviously the international games. And I haven't seen a crowd that got as into the home team as I have in Dublin, which bodes really well for getting a game again in the future. Like to see the players from the Steelers come out, and obviously, the win can give them a little bit of a happier memory coming back from the game. But they were very, very positive about the crowd in Crook Park, and they seem to be big into the idea of coming back. So yeah.
Yes, well, there's so many ways, and again, we are going to dedicate the top of the podcast to this. And Daire, you're jumping on for that. Me and Jason will continue on with our regular preview and look forward to. Of course, we have the London game that coming up, but it is something that we've waited for so long. So why just let it breathe for 1 week when we can let it come into this week too? But it was a whole build up, and I don't want to be too self-indulgent with the three of us giving our own experiences. But Jason, if I was to come back to you, and we'll kind of stagger this out and we'll get to the game in a second. What, say, in the build-up was your standout moment?
Well, so many. I made a kind of 3-day weekend of it, and it really was jam-packed. Kickoff moment from the Friday might have been being in the green room with a well-oiled Brett Kiesel. He was fantastic crack. Don't know how you lads
Jason,
kept him.
Can I put in there for a second? I only talked to Brett Kiesel up on stage, but I was listening to Greg Rosenthal on his NFL Daily Show. He was the one that was saying to me how loose and goosed Brett Kiesel was. So can you actually, without getting Brett into too much trouble, although we know the man's a legend, what was going on in that green room?
Well, I mean, firstly, we know with these guests kind enough to take time out to chat with us, they tend to have jam-packed diaries. So I heard Brett was out the front of the hotel. So I rushed out to him to say, we'll get you on stage straight away and get you on your way. But but I found him at the bar, and he was very comfortably at the bar. He was like, "Ah, you're grand. I'm happy here. Take your time. I'll meet you when I want. Do you want a Guinness?" So that's the kind of mood he was in. He said he was touring the pubs all afternoon, and we were basically the climax of his pub crawl that day. But what a nice guy. I mean, it was just so cool to get to know a guy like Brett, and Steelers legends around all weekend. They really made an effort to come over. I say an effort, but they were all well enjoying themselves, clearly.
Yeah, and I appreciate you obviously helping out. You should have been up on stage with us, but as people noticed, there was 5 microphones, 5 chairs, and we had guests coming on, which was actually really cool. And if you missed our show, so obviously we had a couple of Vikings players. We had the likes of Brett. We had guys on from Talksport. Obviously, so grateful to have Will Gavin come on, Arifa San. But Colleen Wolfe was literally a surprise that even Michael McQuaid, who everyone knows is as prepared as they come, did not know for certain that she was coming until I saw you, Jason, handling her in the back. And we're trying to... Neil eventually actually had to say, because I gave Neil a nudge. If you saw me whispering to him on stage, I apologize. That was what was going on. And it's, yeah, Neil, will you... I cannot interrupt Michael because he will not stop for me. He'll stop for you, Neil. Could you get Colleen up on stage? Because obviously your time is so precious. They were so good taking pictures and stuff afterwards with the crowd, which again, we 100% appreciate. Daire, did you have any experience like that you were kind of like, wow, like I cannot believe this is in the same island that I'm from?
I think just before the game is when it's, and we knew it was going to happen. We were talking all week, like fantasizing about that first, the 10 minutes before the kickoff, when you've got the anthems and all the pre-game festivities and the entrances and everything. And it completely lived up to the hype and more. The Irish national anthem by Lyra was unbelievable. I thought the crowd was just so amped up for it. Like, you get this at all the international games, obviously, but it just felt so much more special being in Croke Park. You're sitting there thinking about the times that you've been in Croke Park all through the years, and what a completely different look it had. And the stadium, by the way, just looked exceptional. Like, we've seen American football in Croke Park before, like Penn State and UCF back 10 years ago. The difference in how that stadium looked, it just looked phenomenal, and it seemed like everyone who came away agreed with that sentiment.
Yeah, it's wild because we've talked about this now, but like we knew that there's going to be a serious buzz, but like you've already alluded to it. It was insane how, not literally 50-50, but how that was a pro Steelers or pro Vikings crowd. Like those neutrals that we're so used to seeing wasn't there this year. And if Dublin was able to take that, now again, it's in its infancy, so well, no, its infancy would speak to maybe more casual fans going to it, but it really was bought in from the two teams, which was absolutely remarkable. So many Steelers fans were able to come over, but that urgency that came with that of, oh no, we're here for a win, was absolutely insane. Like, we are really urging our team on. And I said in our preview podcast, I think I said it at that Friday podcast, I really put the hopes of the Steelers winning based on what we had seen beforehand on the Steelers fans really getting involved. I think ultimately that did happen because the Minnesota Vikings looked like they could come back and win that game, but it was the loudness from the crowd. And it's like, how perfectly timed was the likes of Cranberries and stuff playing that, like, as the Vikings were getting back into it, my partner was sitting in as a fan, and she said she'd read a text from the woman in front of her who was over from Minnesota that said, I'm not enjoying this. I just want to get to the bars. This is obviously when they're getting hammered. She said the way that that woman then locked in when it goes to 24-21, it just said that like there was real passionate fans. There's obviously real fans at all these international games, but there was really passionate fans that had to come away with a win. And if they didn't come away with the win, their day was going to be ruined. We haven't seen that of late in the likes of London and stuff because it's just so segregated with all the different kind of fans. So it definitely was special. What was your then in arena, in stadium, in Croke Park experience, Daire? What was your favorite one?
Look, I mean, I mentioned the national anthem, but just during the game, I thought, as you said, the songs were all on point. I feel like we're not like, we're not pro music Ireland here. We are here to talk about the sport itself, and obviously there was some incredible plays being made. I was really rooting for Justin Jefferson to get in the end zone that time he slipped over. That was I was there for the Steelers, but to see a player of Jefferson's caliber have a big moment in Dublin would have been really special. We got it anyway with DK Metcalf having the 80-yard touchdown. So I mean that's the other part of this. I think I am glad that the big players did live up to the hype. Like obviously Jefferson came out on the wrong side of it, but he looked phenomenal in this game. Aaron Rodgers, I wouldn't say he completely rolled back the clock, but he had a really good game too. And that's a lot better than what like when Rodgers was over in London a couple of years ago and he kind of had a terrible performance and a lowly Giants team beat the Packers. That was a bit of an anguish feel for me. But luckily we got the old school players stepping up and proving their worth.
Yeah, I actually don't think I saw you in the presser afterwards, Daire, because it would have been funny to, compare and contrast the mood from certainly that Packers loss to the Giants and how Aaron Rodgers was after this one. Jason, when we speak about the game, and again, this isn't a review podcast, but I'm certainly aware that so many people just threw up some of the podcast or some of the comments there on the screen. Keep them coming. We love to see them. Love seeing the DMs and stuff that we've gotten about just people like wanting to share their own experience. It's been amazing the last few days. Speaking about the game, Jason, I was actually saying to you during it, I didn't want the narrative to become that players were slipping, and Daire has mentioned it there. Now, I was down in the field, luckily, and I mean, I don't take that for granted. Afterwards, it was not cut up. It just seemed like some of the players got it wrong. They had the wrong cleats on, Justin Jefferson included, that it was not to do with the surface. Daire, I know obviously you were in Brazil when the field was just completely cut up after the Eagles-Packers game last year, whatever. Jason, you were down in the field as well beforehand. What was your moment beforehand that was kind of the pinch me surreal moment?
I thought you were going to ask what did I think of the field conditions. My cutting ability is a bit isn't there anymore. The whole build up, even before I entered the stadium, walking to the stadium, seeing all the Steelers and Vikings jerseys, as you say, on that walk that we've done hundreds of times. Well, hundreds might be a bit much, but we've done many times each before. Seeing the hats, scarves, and headbands stands selling Steelers and Vikings gear. I didn't see any headbands, which was surprising. Surely some Kilkenny and Wexford could be an easy substitute there, but that's when it first kind of started hitting me. When I entered the stadium and Shane McGowan was blasting over the speakers as we're standing on the sideline watching these players warm up. Again, that's just a thought that I never thought would cross my mind. And then, of course, we saw so many personalities pop up. Bill Murray, personal hero of mine, he walked straight past. We saw Jason Kelsey on the sideline. I have to mention the fact that I met Hoggy. Of all these NFL personalities I was chatting to this weekend, I fanboyed over Hoggy, the fella who lives 10 minutes down the road from me, more than anyone, because it was obviously a special week to see him. But that whole build-up, excitement on the sideline, I don't think names that big are drawn to any old international game. So clearly people are going out of their way to come to Ireland to see it.
And was it 7.9 million viewers we saw today was the total number, which is the second most behind the Dolphins, Chiefs in Frankfurt, which, going into those games, they were absolute home and hose, supposed to be playoff teams, and that ended up being a dud. We got an absolute classic from two teams. We are going to talk about the Vikings again later on because, of course, they are staying in London and we want to preview that game. But it was wild to see. Look, mine was, I have to say, I haven't posted the picture yet, but I did say it in one of the videos. I got to talk to Roger Goodell about that Barbuda top that he had on, which is absolutely insane. But the time that he afforded me, I was kind of reflecting on it afterwards, and I think it was partly to do with if he didn't know you on the sideline because that was a who's who, he probably thought, well, you must have earned your right to be on this sideline. We're so grateful all the Pro Football Ireland guys did have the pass to get us onto the sideline. We don't take that for granted. But it was kind of, I think he was letting us know, hey, it must have been the likes of you that have been here. And again, that's not me blowing my own horn, and absolutely sounds like it is. But it was just being able to talk to this guy, and you know what you're saying Daire there. You hope that it's a yearly thing. And anyone listening to this podcast, I'm absolutely certain thinks the same way. I said this on Today FM during the week, and I don't say it as a fan. As a fan, I hope it comes back every single year. As a fan, I think that JJ Watt on Pat McAfee was absolutely correct in saying that instead of having the turkey on the sideline after winning on Thanksgiving, that you could have a pint of Guinness. That would be absolutely iconic and would be a reason alone to come back each year, because I think that there would be such buy-in from that. I think, though, that the week was just so special. Like, you have the likes of Greg joining us, whether Mike was on the podcast with him that was pre-recorded on Thursday, went out Saturday. Friday morning, I was in Kennedy's. It was private now, but you had Greg recording with the Ringer Fantasy podcast, which is just remarkable as well that those guys are in town, and they go kind of under the radar because you're thinking, okay, Greg Olsen and Jamie Erdahl are on the streets and people are really taking notice of them. There was just an outrageous level of buy-in across the board that to hit that level of it being special. I mean, we were actually invited to dinner hosted, I think, by the marketing group in charge of this, but Dan Rooney was actually talking at it, and another higher up from the international side of things. I went from that to hang out with Brett Kiesel for a pint with Rob Mahan, the owner of JR Mahan's, obviously. And it was just the most randomness. And the point that I'm trying to make is it was so special. And you, Daire and Jason and me, I think what made it so special is it was so unique. And that's what you get when the Super Bowl is in a city. And that only happens every few years. So the point that I made in Today FM is I would love it to be every single year. But is there something to be said, either of you can take this point, for it to be less is more, maybe once every 2 or 3 years?
I certainly don't think the fanfare would be the same. No, I certainly don't think, like, you get this with all the international games where it was the same in Brazil, where there was a massive big influx of people coming down for the first one. I think they kind of then just gently send you on your way after that, and if we get more, it's great for us. But you know, the likes of the stars from America probably aren't as prominent at the next one, but that's okay. That's very little issue for us. We'll take the games.
And I think like maybe it would become more of a regular occurrence for the Irish fans, but you know, we've obviously been speaking about the Irish fans and the presence they had. I must say, like Roger Goodell said, proportionally, it was the largest amount of American fans to come over to one of these international games. I think it was at about 30% compared to 10% normally. And just in and around the city, in the game itself, the American audience was fantastic as well. They're all embracing it so much, and all in such good spirits. So if it is a yearly thing, and obviously the teams will be changing year on year, some may be more regular than others, but it's going to give other cities around America a chance to visit Ireland and experience that culture. So at least that level of excitement will be replicated, no matter how frequent it is.
It's funny. It's something that I'd said when the game was first announced, that if you were one of those fans that are on the fence about these international games, I wanted you to know. I was on, I think, Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, and I said, just know that we'll look after the team. Just make sure you look after our stadium and understand the pride that we have in that. I think the Americans absolutely did appreciate what Croke Park meant to us. And I think that fans also saw what the Steelers meant. When you're saying there, Jason, about like, you know, if we keep on going in and out with the teams, like I was like, oh man, the Steelers, if they knew that this was the home from home that they could come to and reliably know that people would show out. I know there's a lot of comments from Pittsburgh Steelers fans and on our DMs and certainly on our comment sections saying, oh man, I got to go next time. I'm after missing out big time here. Absolutely feel that. So again, this is obviously the preview for week 5 coming up here, so we better get out of here regards this section quickly. But I do want to wrap up with some points, and please keep dropping the comments as well if you're listening in live on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. I guess it's gone into a few things. So I'll go really quick. So Jason, you can hit this one. How many of the events did you go to? Did you get down to Dublin Castle? Did you get down to the tailgate? Or the shop or anything? Did any of those stand out for someone that might have missed
it? I got to the shop. Unfortunately, for my bank account, I came away with a few things. I got a helmet there as well somewhere. But the shop was on the Saturday morning. Also got down to the Steelers tailgate the morning of the game, which was a great atmosphere as well. Again, just showing out numbers were those Steelers fans. They were kind of the two main fan events I got to personally.
And Dara will finish with this one on the game. What was the moment it hit you, whether that's like on the Wednesday beforehand, or I suppose you didn't come in until Friday. What was the moment that it hit you that it was, wow, we're getting the game?
When me and Connell drove in my little car, my very unglamorous little Toyota Auris, and pulled up at a parking space and walked about 20 steps and seen Justin Jefferson out catching passes. That was probably where it hit me that, oh, like there's Justin Jefferson and there is my car that I just drove from home for about an hour. I love you too, Connell. And this year, yeah, I'm just going to keep plugging the college podcast. In all seriousness, no, it was an incredible experience. I can't believe he set that in. But yeah, I'm very much happy, and I love that point you made about the Steelers maybe finding a way to come back. We're definitely in the honeymoon period right now because something that I wasn't aware of is that Steelers fans don't essentially they don't love the atmosphere in recent years at Heinz Field. They kind of said that Dublin was equally, if not louder, than Heinz Field in recent years. That was something that really threw me off guard. They were saying, some of the fans over there maybe aren't as rowdy as they once were. So interesting to see how that transpires, and if they like to come back to Dublin, if they can build up a win streak in Dublin, it could be really on for years to come.
Oh man, we saw the Minnesota Vikings obviously went into that game with a 4-game international win streak. I did not know about that comment, Dara. Certainly interesting. It's kind of funny because the Steelers on the bye this week. You talk about the honeymoon period. I'd absolutely love to keep talking about it, but we will get off the topic. Dara, while we have you, we're not going to keep you around for the whole of the podcast, but it's something that Dara, or it's something that Jason, you'd kind of put into our group chat this week. The box on the screen says, is the writing already on the wall for some divisions? And I think you had a more eloquent name that you put into the production chat this weekend, but explain what we're going to talk about.
So I've seen enough. Kind of thinking of certain bookmakers who might, pay out on a team winning the league after a week into the season, stuff like that. What NFL divisions in their current order do you think will remain like that by the end of the season, in a nutshell?
One of those bookmakers you're talking about is probably not the reputable and much loved, and of course, sincerely, I mean this. We are brought to you by SBK. If you like to bet, we think that the odds are fantastic on there. I've been using them all season. I'm not banned yet from winning, but I have been able to win, which is fun. If you don't like gambling, don't. And of course, always bet responsibly. To the bosses that I was probably supposed to say that earlier to, Michael McQuaid. I'm sorry that I left it so late. When we wrap around for part 2, I'll come back to that. Dara, we're not going to keep you in for the entire time. You actually don't even have to stay around for the whole segment. So, of course, you are a collegiate guys. So in terms of college football, the NFC North, everyone knows you as the Green Bay Packers guy. Actually, just on that, did you get down to the Packers bar at all in Dublin?
I was speaking to the guys over at UK and Irish Packers, and I didn't get down to it, but I did see plenty of videos and it looked incredible. So they're doing it again this weekend in London. So busy week for those guys.
Oh, good stuff. And it's only right around the corner from the shop and all. So in terms of the NFC North, Dara, the Packers specifically, I suppose we're going to talk about, or you can obviously talk about each of the 4 teams. I text you saying that the Packers are certainly going to be a 13-win team. After 2 weeks, they're looking phenomenal. Then the Browns obviously go and beat them. They get a tie there last week. How are you feeling about the division?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely a case of tier 1 and tier 2, with Detroit and Green Bay both in that tier 1. The head-to-head thing, like it kind of loses all significance now, because unless the Lions conjure up a tie or the Packers conjure up a second tie, this isn't going to come down to head-to-head at any point. So they're kind of in that split even zone, which is interesting. But I do like the idea that the Packers would maybe get out of this rut. They have the bye week now. They have a chance to get their O-line healthy. So I think the Packers they're fine. Like their offense to score, and their defense had a bit of a blip against a sneaky good Cowboys offense with Dak. Dak's been playing out of his mind recently, in my opinion. And then that Browns game away, again, I'm not going to buy too much stock into that. It was a weird game. It happens to every team, so maybe that's me being far too overly optimistic. But I've seen enough against 2 playoff caliber teams in week 1 and week 2 to suggest that the Packers will be okay. The Lions, on the other hand, they've really fired into gear after that wake up call in week one. If anything, I'm pretty sure every team in this division would have a positive score difference. If the only team that don't have is the Bears, and that's only because the Lions absolutely wellied them a couple of weeks ago. So this is a higher floor division than most. I am gonna probably rule out the Vikings just with their injury situation at the minute, and the Bears have looked better. Caleb Williams is looking better, but I still think they don't have enough to compete with Green Bay and Detroit. As for who it wins it, people are going to side with Green Bay. I'm not as heavy into Green Bay right now as the Lions, because obviously these two teams have to play each other again in Detroit. So while the Packers schedule maybe is a little bit softer in the coming weeks, you're looking at, I think they play Arizona. Sorry, no offense, lads, and the Carolina Panthers, where I
Here,
think
only one of those teams tends to come out on top. You know that there.
yeah. I don't want to talk about that, but we'll definitely have to pay attention to how this plans out over the rest of the year. I think Jordan Love is playing really, really good stuff at the minute, the best football of his career, in my opinion. It's just a case of whether they can, stop these random happenings such as a 40-40 tie and a loss to the Browns involving a blocked field goal.
Yeah, it's funny you're talking about the tie there, because they could have absolutely messed up the finish of that game as well, and it could have gone down as a loss. So just to kind of briefly hit on it. So right now it's the Lions, then the Packers, then the Vikings, then the Bears, in that order in the division. By the sounds of you there, you think that actually you could stick to that exact placing
Oh
when
yeah,
all is said and done.
absolutely. It could stick to that exact place. And I think if anything, if I had to gun to my head, have to call that right now, I'd probably say the Lions are the pick of that teams in that division. I just think they have a higher floor. They have a higher floor. Green Bay can be this exceptional team that we've seen in week one, but the Lions have shown now for a couple of years that they can just hammer teams week in and week out, and that's something that the Packers and LaFleur are kind of yet to prove. So yeah, all to play for.
Yeah, boom. Daire, you're welcome to wait around on the podcast, but this is actually the easiest transition point, because I do have, I believe, a frame that will help me get out of this. Maybe I don't actually have the frame, so you might have to listen to us for a little more minute. No,
Oh, there we go.
I do have. Oh, I
Yeah,
don't.
it's
I
up.
don't. That's our next segment. That will. I'm looking around here. Oh, I do have it. I do have it.
You do
Excuse
have
me
it.
if your screen looks ugly while I try to remove Dara. Excuse me, sorry, I will do this correctly. This is your chance to say goodbye as I take that ugly, hideous. Thank you obviously for joining us, Dara.
This is a crazy ultimatum being put on me that I have to get out of here because the screen has changed. But thanks so much for having me, lads. I can do this anytime, and best of luck with the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, and of course we appreciate your work for us over the last few days. So as we do get Dara out of here, finally, Jason, appreciate Dara coming on. Yeah, so we're going to keep on going with this. This is not the end of the podcast, of course, but I just had a meltdown trying to get the banners there to work. Michael McQuaid, we need him on the show desperately always. Jason, who's the division that you looked at doing?
So I'm looking towards the AFC East. Currently sitting Bills 4-0, Patriots 2-2, Miami 1-3 after coming out on top against the Jets, who are 0-4. I don't think I need to speak too much about Buffalo leading the division by 2 games already, and they've already actually beaten 2 division rivals in that time. Patriots this weekend will be the third matchup. Think about, just to quickly state the obvious about how impressive the Bills are. What's really stood out to me through 4 weeks is the fact that they haven't even needed Josh Allen's heroics every week. James Cook is second in the NFL in rushing, and it just looks so easy right now. And if you want to go into the schedule and the Bills' outlook from here, so many winnable games. Every game is, of course, winnable when you're Buffalo. But essentially, the only 2 games where you might say it's a bit of a 50-50 matchup remaining their entire season is the Chiefs, to whom Buffalo is home, and the Eagles, who Buffalo is also home against. I'll tell you now, get up that Bills schedule, and I don't know, am I the first person to say this season, but 17-0, here we come, because it looks so doable right now. In terms of the other 3 teams, so as I say, it's Patriots, Miami, Jets at the moment, and maybe the lazy way to determine how this division is going to finish up is just by looking at the matches that all three of these teams have had against one another to this point. The Patriots beat Miami in week 2, and of course Miami just beat the Jets this week on by. There is, I'm not going to rule it out and say that these teams couldn't finish in a different order, because it is hard to call right now, because they've all had their highs and lows through 4 weeks. What I will say is that these teams are all on very different trajectories. The Patriots bottomed out last year, but the roster is rebuilt and they're showing signs of it through 4 weeks, and they look like they're on the rise right now. Miami, very different. It looks like they've peaked a couple of years ago, and they're on a steep decline, particularly now after the loss of Tyreek Hill, who just read the surgery went well. It was good to see him in good spirits going off the field, but that was obviously a tough injury for the team to take. And then you have the Jets, who are probably at that bottom rebuild stage right now. New coach, a lot of turnover on the roster. So their performances are really reflecting that. Very tough to call. They're playing teams close, which is great, which is a testament to the type of culture that a guy like Aaron Glenn is already creating over there. But I haven't seen enough so far to say that they're going to be a threat to make any push up to that kind of second spot in the division. The offense in particular just looks right now like it's maybe struggling for a bit of an identity. Breece Hall looks good, but it's very sporadic. Justin Fields looks good in moments, but it does look like they're just still a bit away from putting it all together. So ultimately, I think the Patriots will have enough to finish in second. They're going to just keep progressing as the year goes on. Christian Gonzalez is back on defense. He's making a difference already. Stephon Diggs had his first 100-yard game in 2 years at the weekend just gone by. And Drake May shows what he can do when they can avoid those turnovers. They went from 5 turnovers the week before to 0 this week. So I think that's the type of team that we're going to see increase as the season goes on. Miami are going to get their wins. Mike McDaniel, for all his faults, he can put points on the board. It's going to hurt without Hill, but I do think they'll be able to beat some of those weaker teams, such as a Jets, as they've just done. And for the Jets, will they turn it around as the season goes? Hopefully they can. They're showing some good signs, but they just look like they're a bit away. So I think strong possibility this division finishes in the current order.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you're giving Miami as much credit. I think you must be pulling your hair out if you're a New York Jets fan right now. It's like not to be able to get that one over the line the other day, like, oh Jesus Christ, yeah, no, the Jets I think are in such a tough position. I do like what you point out about Aaron Glenn building culture, but so there's other head coaches that are in their first year now too that are able to make a bit of an impact a bit faster. Obviously, Aaron Glenn was there in Chicago with another man that's doing okay with the Chicago Bears. Obviously, there's problems there for the Chicago Bears too, but at least get a win on the board as well. I think it's difficult, especially when it's the Miami Dolphins within your division that you could have pulled it off against. The division, though, not to stray too far from MetLife Stadium, is the NFC East for me. I suppose the easiest way to start. The Eagles top the division at the moment, then the Commanders, then the Cowboys, then the Giants. I suppose I'll do it through reverse order. I don't want to be disrespectful to the New York fans, especially after you've just gone through. But right now, the Giants obviously are going through their Jackson Dart era, which is good for them. Look, I have to say, absolutely amazing that on the day we hosted our first ever Dublin game, that Jude McAtamney was playing there for the New York Giants. It did kind of get lost in the whole shuffle, because then after the game, when he's playing, would have been when Shane Lowry was winning the Ryder Cup. So I don't know if people were necessarily paying as much attention to Jude as we would have liked to have otherwise, because of course last year when he played, that was in Germany and it was obviously the standalone game. I know that, look, I'm to blame, hold up my hand. We were a bit preoccupied. We obviously were around Croke Park for a large section of that game, and then had a couple of drinks ourselves afterwards or whatever. I don't know what that has to do with the New York Giants' fortunes, but another one to tie in is I know Colleen Wolfe saw Cam Scatterbo jersey in Dublin last week, which again, it's great that they have this. And then the huge scalp to beat the LA Chargers is obviously massive as well. But realistically, dart was 111 yards in the air. He struggled with the deep ball. He obviously was taken off running, but teams are going to be able to defend the run game if they think that that's all that you have to do against them. So I think it becomes a bit more interesting with this division with the Cowboys, particularly coming off, like Daire was talking about there, a 40-40 Sunday Night Football classic after our Dublin game. And Dak he's playing out of his mind, really, when you think like where they are right now, that they are 1-2-1 as of right now. But Dak is absolutely not the problem. I suppose I don't want to ignore that they're without some interior offensive linemen, and they are down to George Pickens. But I suppose that is part of the problem too, that with Pickens alone wasn't good enough in Pittsburgh. So with a better quarterback, can that be the case here? Of course, the run game is vastly better than I anticipated it would be coming into the year. They do obviously get Jonathan Mingo back in about 3 weeks on. They get CD Lamb probably 2 to 3 weeks back. In between now and then is the Jets, the Panthers, and Commanders. But it's just on the defense. I mean, oh my God, Jason, that Cowboys defense is an absolute. So outside of the Eagles game, which was week 1 when they conceded 24 points, they've conceded at least 30 points in all the rest of the games. That's 37 to the Giants, 31 to the Bears, and then obviously 40 to the Packers. Sunday night, they gave up 489 of total yards. And they cannot get off the field on third down. 10 of 14 on Sunday, 8 of 14 to the Bears the week before. It's just worrying. Would you give the Cowboys a chance watching what that can do? Can he be the standalone or one of those standalone quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes has been, that can will an offense to more wins than the defense will allow?
I think Dak can be a top tier quarterback in this league, and he's showing it this year. I think a big part of his success so far has been the strengthened run game, as you say. It's so easy to overlook that in an offense. People are so fixated on the quarterback, but when you get a run game that doesn't involve Ezekiel Elliott in order and efficiently move the ball on the ground, it makes the job easier for Dak. And I think when that offensive line is performing and he has that stable run game, he's proven many times now what he can do in this league. Ultimately, I think the Cowboys remind me a bit of the Bengals of last season. No matter what heroics Dak is doing on offense, as you mentioned, I think that defense is just going to be a lot to overcome. But that said, can they pip the Commanders? What are your thoughts on the Commanders, Mark?
Yeah, I suppose I'll kind of forgive them. They obviously lost to the Falcons last week, and they're without Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. The Falcons were a team that were reeling off the blowout, the 33-0 blowout against the Panthers the week before. Unfortunately for the Commanders, they now match up with the LA Chargers this weekend in kind of a similar situation. The Chargers absolutely did not expect, as they topped some people's power rankings, I think, going into last week, they didn't expect to lose to the Giants. So I think they can't go in an 0-2 slide, the Chargers as well. So I think that's difficult on the Commanders. No, I think the Commanders will be there and thereabouts. It's just, for me, you cannot look past the Eagles right now. They haven't displayed any kind of a Super Bowl hangover. And if you just look to history, and this is something that I'm so obsessed with, the longest streak in NFL history of no team going back-to-back to win a division is currently 20 years in the NFC East. The Eagles were the last back-to-back champions of the NFC East all the way back in 2004. Like, if we looked up the music from 2004, I can only imagine what or how far that would bring us back. And it's just like, I think it's probably due. Like, the Patriots went on the longest winning streak of winning a division in 11 years. I think that would double that almost in terms of going the other way and not winning one back-to-back. No, I think the Eagles are still the powerhouse there. I didn't think that would be the case. I thought that the Commanders could push on and maybe win the division this year. But, like, obviously the way that no one's figured out the offense all offseason, it's like, well, what's going to change now? And it's like, they have played some decent teams.
As I scrambled to find your mute button, I think privileged position that what sums up the privileged position that the Eagles are in is that you have AJ Brown releasing some cryptic wide receiver-esque tweets about wanting to silently walk off into the distance because he isn't getting the attention he wants. They're 4-0. I think I kind of like a wide receiver who's dramatic, to be honest. I think you kind of need that attitude to thrive in that position. But yeah, it looked that the team is well oiled right now. I think against the Bucks, Jalen Hurts has had these moments and that offense where they do tend to stagnate. So it's not like they're invincible. I do think they will suffer a couple of losses throughout the season. Jalen Hurts didn't complete a pass in the second half against the Buccaneers, which is quite hard to believe. But ultimately, they can win games in so many different ways. So when the pass game does falter, you have Barkley to step up. If the offense as a whole falters, we know what that defensive line is like, even if it's blocking field goals at the end of the game, as they did against the Rams. True powerhouses in the NFL can win in a variety of ways because different units are always going to have off days.
Yeah, when you look up who they've actually beaten so far this year, it's the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Bucks, and the Rams. Like when you're talking about like easy schedules and difficult schedules and stuff, like I think, like you say, I've seen them do it in a number of different ways, and it's like the defense is obviously extremely impressive. We've talked about this in the build up to the season, saying how they're built to be extremely consistent, and when one guy goes off and signs a major deal, someone else is going to step in to fill his shoes. It's just outrageous. I thought that was a really nice segment that you put together. If we had Michael, we could have gone one more, and then Daire probably would have tied it in a bit more. It's not to say that won't happen when one of the other divisions. I wanted a bit more jeopardy to it. Not that it would be jeopardy on ourselves, but I wanted to be able to say for certain, well, we all haven't gotten these right, so we're going to be stunned when one of these guys doesn't win the division. But I think that these are probably the home runs in terms of I really believe in us right here. So it's like maybe we listen back to this week 5 preview and we're like, wait, that didn't come off. How are you guys so certain your October 1st selves as we record this? But who knows? We'll come back around. So that's going to end this part of the podcast. Of course, we'll roll back into it, and I'll do the obligatory Michael McQuaid 10-second pause, Jason. Welcome into Pro Football Ireland, part 2 of our week 2 preview. Jason, I'm not going to ask you how you got along. I actually requested that Michael remove that the last time we did one of these and said, well, let's just roll into it. And if you're listening along, thank you so much. Or if you're watching it back delayed, of course, you can always catch the live shows. Some of you are listening in live. I do see some comments. I missed them when we were talking about them earlier. I'll pull back towards the end of the show. And of course, if you have any questions or if you have any comments, I'd love to hear about your experience at the NFL Dublin game. We'll read them out towards the end. In this section, Jason, as I realize that we're going to actually have to change the little banner to reflect something a bit more relevant, we're going to talk in this section, London calling. The NFL moves across the Irish Sea to London to start off a 3-game stint there, 2 games in Tottenham, 1 in Wembley. One of the teams that we recently saw in Dublin, the Minnesota Vikings, are going to be taking on the Cleveland Browns. It says on the screen, Virgin Media 2 will have free-to-air coverage of the Vikings versus Browns from 2 p.m. on Sunday I did not realize that I had left, and I apologize that there was a problem with that graphic. I do not know what was ever going to, and I made that graphic, Jason. I don't know what it's going to. Welcome back to you. This podcast brought to you by SBK. If you enjoy gambling, perhaps that is somewhere you want to go to. If you don't. And of course, if you have a gambling problem, stop. I should probably have, Jason, as you take over for a second and I get the gambleaware.ie website to the tip of my tongue. How you are going to this game, Jason? You are going over, I believe, to London this weekend?
Yeah, I'll be going over. Thankfully, Cork has reinstated a 6 a.m. flight and an 11 p.m. flight back. So these day trips to London have become more doable. Looking forward to being there. Looking forward to covering it for PFI as always. And a couple of interesting storylines have emerged even over the last few hours for things we'll be looking out for.
I will not be at the game. I'm very happy to announce, I actually haven't said it publicly yet, I will be joining Michael on the broadcast for Virgin Media 2. I'm extremely honored. It was something that I had to keep tight-lipped. I didn't have to keep tight-lipped. I chose to keep tight-lipped because I am one for believing in jinxes and bad karma and bad juju and all that it goes along with it. I was extremely Delighted to be asked to be part of it, and we'll see how it goes now, Jason. Of course, I'm going to be missing hanging around with the boys. It's funny because I was sick of doing the day trips. I love going to the games. I love going to the games. Tottenham or Wembley. I probably have a preference for Tottenham, but it really doesn't bother me. I know some people definitely have a preference for the stadium. Out of interest, do you have a preference for the stadium? You've been to the two, haven't you?
Yeah, that Tottenham Stadium is so impressive. It's like something you'd see over in Vegas or Minneapolis. It really is top quality stadium. So I really enjoy it. I've only been there. I've been there twice now. Wembley, of course, has the history. Love the Wembley way, but in terms of actually inside the stadium itself, that Tottenham Stadium is so impressive. If you haven't been over there, get over there because you'll enjoy it just for the atmosphere.
Yeah, it's said by someone who broke their leg, obviously, on that pitch. And I know I do. I love going over. I think we've met some fantastic fans. I'll miss being outside and getting our content. I also won't miss being outside and getting our content because sometimes I don't like going over to people and bugging them because you're like, who's got to actually talk to us now? We're so lucky. Obviously, the brand has become more and more recognizable and people are willing to jump on our social stuff. But other people, mainly the Americans, sometimes have no clue what I'm saying. I was like, will he be in a video? Yeah, as they walk away and they kind of give us a look like, why did those guys come up to us and approach us? That was a bit weird. I swear it was all about board is what Michael McQuaid will shout over at them and be like, we're Pro Football Ireland. Michael always is great. He's always like, as they walk away, he's like, Pro Football Ireland, here's the here's us on Twitter. It's all about board. He's funny doing it. Yeah, but yeah, Jason, looking forward to it. As you said, the Minnesota Vikings, is this one of the storylines that you're bringing up?
Well, I mean, I know you're going to talk a bit about the Browns, so I'll save that bit of news that came out today on them. I think, firstly, for a team that's doing this 2-week journey across the Atlantic, I can't imagine the feeling in that locker room after the game in Dublin, because as much as we praised the Steelers, the Vikings showed up and gave their best shot as well, but ultimately fell flat despite a good effort in terms of a comeback. So to have that come down and that loss happen the way it did, a lot of these guys will have families and young kids back home. They'll be missing them. They'll be dying to get home in a week's time. So it is tough. So I think Kevin O'Connell has a big challenge on his hands to try and get the morale back up in that locker room and get straight back to work, because while some people might look at the Cleveland Browns as a weaker team in the NFL, they do pose some significant challenges. First thing to cover off, I suppose, in terms of the Vikings, is the fact that Carson Wentz is all but confirmed as the quarterback again this week. There was an outside chance that JJ McCarthy might be back in time, but Kevin O'Connell has all but ruled that out in his press conference today, saying they'll be looking to get him a week of practice before he comes back. So it is going to be Carson Wentz again. And I think the biggest challenge that the Vikings now are facing is the health of that offensive line that sits in front of them. We saw the Steelers have a field day in Croke Park last Sunday. They sacked Carson Wentz 6 times, and much of that success came after a couple of those offensive linemen dropped out of the game. None more important than right tackle Brian O'Neill, who was matched up against TJ Watt before he left. Vikings have a 13.2% sack rate right now. Part of that is down to injuries, but that is actually the second highest sack rate, it's the highest sack rate in the NFL. Pair that with a Cleveland Browns pass rush attack that's ranked number 1 by PFF, obviously led by Myles Garrett. And I think that's first and foremost the biggest challenge that this Vikings team have ahead of them. Because if they can't, protecting Carson Wentz aside, if that offensive line can't work as a cohesive unit, they can't get that run game going, firstly, which has been their key to success to this point. They didn't manage to get Jordan Mason going last week, but he's having a good season overall, 4.8 yards per carry. So when you are losing that run threat, and particularly when you might fall behind in a game early, then it means it's going to fall on Carson Wentz to drop back and make plays happen under duress. We obviously know the challenges that can bring. Credit to Carson Wentz. he threw for 350 yards in the game last Sunday. Quite how high that yardage total was actually surprised me when I looked at it. But he did play some good ball, besides those turnovers and sacks, which obviously ultimately decided the game. But yeah, I think you're going to talk a bit about the Browns' defense, I believe, or is the offense?
Yeah, well, I'll jump on that, and then I'll wrap back around to the offense. But you're dead right. Like, it looked, it was a comment you made, Jason. If you had reversed that game and the Vikings were the ones that pulled away and the Steelers were coming back before the comeback, we were enjoying it because we were saying, you know what, the Rooney family has really invested in this country. We were biased in that sense, saying, well, we hope that they get the reward for really pushing the game coming here. We're not biased in terms of wanting one team to win versus the other. Of course, we're known as being Cardinals fans, but that's just how it felt. Some people said that the game was stale. I never, ever, ever saw it that way. But then other people were thinking that Carson Wentz had a stinker. And I was like, I don't actually agree with that. I think he did. And the end of game showed it. Like, we were talking about, like, oh, do you go for it here? Do you believe that he has it here? Don't get me wrong. There's a massive play. Obviously, I actually do not have the yardage for what it was, an 80-yarder or whatever there towards the game that could have gone into the end zone. Obviously, like, that obviously boosts his or juices his numbers hugely as well. But I thought Carson Wentz played a decent game. But like you said, going against this defense, and this is how we kind of tightened it up as we gently nodded towards this game last week, saying, well, the Vikings have a good defense, the Browns have a good defense. I mean, the Packers team that we obviously said put up 40 points against the Cowboys, the week before that, they only put 10 up against this Cleveland Browns unit. As you said, Myles Garrett continues to be a one-man show. And of course, when you're saying that the O-line for the Vikings is injured and continued to get injured in Crow Park last week, that doesn't bode well. When the Browns have been losing, it has absolutely not been the defense's fault. They just played the Detroit Lions, to bring it a bit more recent, who only had a 277 total yard game against them. It was Joe Flacco and his 3 turnovers, and then the punt return that really put them out. I mean, that's 24 of 34 points that was conceded, was set up by poor special teams and offense. But I suppose, do we continue to bury the lead? No, like, the big thing was Joe Flacco. So the change of quarterback is just remarkable now, with Dylan Gabriel having to go up what we do believe is a respected defense here with the Minnesota Vikings. Dylan Gabriel becoming the first NFL quarterback to have his first NFL start outside the US, if ChatGPT is to be corrected. But I do believe that that's correct, because it doesn't come off the top of my head who else it could have been. And when you talk about this Cleveland Browns team, Tom Pelissero was right to point out on Twitter earlier on just how many rookies they have significantly contributing to them right now, and does speak to the transformation that the team's gone through. So if you look at quarterback, they obviously have Dylan Gabriel in, Quinton Judkins, the running back. You have defensive tackle Mason Graham, and you have the linebackers Schwezinger. But then you also have massive snaps coming from Dylan Sampson there over the weekend. The tight end Harold Fannin Jr. and Isaiah Bond is really breaking out at wide receiver. The reason that I actually take the time to list all of them out is you do want to keep it somewhat simplified for them. But a simplified offense, and especially a quick game offense, really worked against the Minnesota Vikings for the Steelers. Do I have the time to throw for Aaron Rodgers? No, I don't. But his air yards per attempt was 2.6, which it just shows that, like, now they were definitely playing heavy sets, the Steelers, the other day. And then, yeah, adding in the likes of Fannin at tight end, that is what they're trying to go for a little bit. Those shallower throws definitely worked because you don't let that pass rush get home. That got home 7 times against Browning for the Bengals the week before they came to Dublin. But as they play a lot of zone defense, I wonder, will Kyle Shanahan do a bit like, Kevin Stefanski do a bit like Kyle Shanahan and kind of give Gabriel the passes, get the play in as fast as he can so he can read the defense. And even if he's still in the micro, because that's what you need. You need to help your guy out, because otherwise he's going to take way too many sacks. I think the quick game could absolutely work for the Browns, and we just saw it work. So I think that's probably the best way to go, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, not to keep bringing it back to the run game, but we were at the press conference for Aaron Rodgers after the Steelers' victory last Sunday, and the talk, as you know, what grabs most of the headlines or what most fans might chat about on Twitter is always, where's our downfield passing game? Why isn't it there? Why can't we hit Metcalf? Why aren't we hitting these deep passes? And Rodgers said just very calmly in the press conference, when you don't have a run game, you can't pass down the field. What did the Steelers bring to the game last Sunday? A very strong run game with Gainwell. Ultimately, I think the Browns need to follow the same recipe. If they can, they need to help their young quarterback out as much as they can. And Quinshon Judkins, who you mentioned there, has been playing some very good football over these last couple of weeks for the Cleveland Browns. Do they have the strong tight ends that the Steelers are able to utilize? I'm not so sure. I know they have a couple of good guys, but really, what Gainwell and Bijan Robinson a couple of weeks prior, when he gashed the Minnesota defense, what they managed to do was get around the edge, around the outside, and they made some great gains on the ground there. And what does that do? Causes the defense to have to, focus on the running back and set themselves back a bit, and that gives the quarterback a fraction of a second more time. It's funny when you look at the time to throw stats. It's insane how we dissect 2.6 seconds versus 2.5 seconds, but that 0.1 of a second really makes all the difference when it comes to stringing a passing game together. So from the Browns' perspective, they need to get that running game going, and as you say, just give Gabriel some nice quick throws to ensure that the Vikings defense doesn't have a chance to get him under pressure, which they've done so well with some other quarterbacks. I think what's interesting, just looking at the Vikings defense, you mentioned there how Steelers managed to get out to a strong start, and it could have been different if the Vikings managed to do so. The Brian Flores defense of having so much disguise and causing quarterbacks to just get in a conundrum about where they're going or where they're looking on each play. The effect of that is much more powerful when the team has a lead, because that team's offense becomes far more predictable. If your opposition is able to bully you on the ground and gain 5-6 yards per carry, then it doesn't matter whether you have cornerbacks blitzing or safeties at the line of scrimmage or defensive ends dropping back in coverage. No matter how much disguise you try and bring into your defense, if your unit is getting outmanned and pushed around on the ground, then that's ultimately how you can beat it. The Steelers managed to do it last week. I think the Browns have shown that they have a strong enough run game led by Judkins that they definitely have a shot this week against the Vikings. As I said, people might look at the Browns as a weaker team, but they do have a lot of good players. And if they can get some form of run game going, we know what their defense can do. It definitely is a challenge for the Vikings this week.
It's funny. I was listening. I promise. If you're watching me on the screen, I was clearly concentrating on something else, though. I was editing in Photoshop, seeing could I on time edit the graphics so I didn't say at the end of the sentence there. No, you're dead right with the offensive line. The Browns' offensive line is really good with the run. Their problem clearly is protecting the passer, and that was probably illustrated by trading for Cam Robinson on Monday. And obviously they're hoping to get Jack Conklin back. But Jason, I suppose also, not to belabor the point, and I suppose actually we haven't really done that, but bringing Dylan Gabriel in now was obviously that Joe Flacco just is not the guy that he once was when he was brought to Cleveland, and suddenly he had them playing lights out. Dylan Gabriel, I'm glad he was given the nod first. I suppose anyone in the preseason, no, not anyone in the preseason, the crazy people that to be on in comment sections on ESPN NFL or the Athletic NFL or any NFL related social media, excluding ours because we didn't really touch on the Cleveland Browns quarterback room so much. Why now for Dylan Gabriel? I suppose I was thinking about some points myself, and I was kind of thinking about, okay, so what you obviously want to see what he looks like. Now, I'd said on the podcast now 2 weeks ago, I think, that I didn't want to see him against this defense because why throw him to the wolves? Why don't you let Joe Flacco take that bullet and then take your boy, go back, and then talk about what you're going to do then when you go home to Minnesota? They're obviously deciding to give it to him now. I suppose I wonder, do they want to see the difference, obviously, that you can have with your quarterback. But basically, if you're in play for a really high draft pick like the Cleveland Browns could be, and you've drafted a guy in the 3rd round in Dylan Gabriel and the 5th round in Shedeur Sanders, is it now about maximizing as much time with Dylan Gabriel? Are you giving him potentially, say, a 10-week stretch? And if it's not working out, then are you saying, okay, we have 3 weeks with Shedeur, because then we're going to move on to draft really high quarterback next year, because we'll know how the kind of quarterback draft is looking at that point. Do you think that there could be anything in that to it?
The reason I think that's probably not the case is the fact that Kevin Stefanski is the head coach, and he's ultimately going to be trying to save his own job throughout the course of the season. So head coaches don't tend to think ahead to a draft this early in the season. Head coaches are thinking about winning as many games as they can, so they don't get fired. And he is a guy who will be on the hot seat if things keep going the way they're going. I think it's ultimately a decision that's being made because they think he gives them a better chance of winning. You look at the New York Giants. Russell Wilson had one of the best games of his career in week 2, and he found himself dropped for Jackson Dart a week later. I think that was an instance where clearly the coaching staff saw that Dart was doing stuff behind the scenes around the practice field that they thought, oh, there's no point in waiting any longer. I want to see what this guy's got in reality. I don't think the Browns are doing this move for the same positive reasons. It's more of, okay, this is what Joe Flacco is doing in front of us. Let's see what we got in Gabriel, because it surely can't be worse. It's a bit of an oxymoron, because typically when you put a rookie quarterback out there, you want to make sure he's well protected. Otherwise, you're throwing him into the lion's den, and you're just, put him in a situation where we can't win. But the other way of looking at it, maybe the fact that Joe Flacco, what age is he now? He must be almost 40. He clearly has lost all mobility. And when the offensive line is struggling to block him as much as they have, Joe Flacco has shown no ability to help them out and avoid the odd pressure. He's a statue back there. So maybe part of it is Dylan Gabriel, at least he's going to have a chance to avoid or roll out from some of this pressure, because right now Joe Flacco is just shooting fish in a barrel for the defensive lineman.
You're dead right at 40 years of age, and you're dead right with that point. I think it's actually massive. This obviously the point that he is in his career, Dylan Gabriel probably will show a bit more mobility, and it's a shame for Joe Flacco. I didn't even read the comments, old news clearly, but I didn't even read the comments about whether he was upset or not, because barring an injury to Dylan Gabriel and the Browns' complete lack of faith in Shedeur Sanders, that's probably Joe Flacco done in the NFL. Now, he somehow was able to prolong his career about 3 years longer than we anticipated. I mean, he was obviously changing his thoughts to his ownership in St. Pat's Athletic, which continues to fly under the radar. I always think it's funny. But yeah, it's like, I presume that's a one-time legend when he obviously was let go from his position with the Baltimore Ravens so that Lamar Jackson could get that job. He kind of just became a bit more obscure. But like, I mean, when you and I started watching the game, he was obviously a legend and, a sure thing Hall of Famer, obviously getting off to a very hot start in his first couple of years there in Baltimore. But I presume that's we never see him again.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a ride. Unfortunately, it seems like he's going to be going out on this firm downward trajectory. Would have been nice to end the career on a high. But I'm sure he's put a bit more money in his pocket in the process. But yeah, look, he's been a fun guy to watch. 40 years old. That's just some achievement in its own right. Funny enough, I was only reading an article earlier that was talking about the Ravens Super Bowl win back in
2012.
2012, wasn't it? Yeah. That season, the Ravens actually fired their offensive coordinator halfway through December. So I don't think it's often that you see a Super Bowl winning team make such a drastic change so late in the season. But what Joe Flacco managed to do from that moment and through the playoffs, it was spectacular to watch. And he's created some memories, lifetime memories for NFL fans, particularly Baltimore Ravens fans.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's massive, obviously, because, I suppose is a massive, probably not, but whatever. Now moving on, I suppose anything else to say about the game that you're excited to see?
Yeah, look, just looking forward to seeing it, and whether the Vikings can bounce back. As I say, it's going to be a long week of practice after that loss. They'll be all looking to go home, but I'm sure they'll try and make the trip not completely a failure and try to get a win against the Browns.
The point I was actually going to say was not that it was massive. It shows why Tom Brady wanted to go out on a high, or why Aaron Rodgers is committing a bit more, that he is on a high, especially in Dublin the other day. He did say to someone that asked, I think it was Sky that asked, he said, you don't have to say it's the twilight of my career. It's probably going to be my last or whatever. We will move forward as we move into one of the final segments or whatever. Are the Bucks a home run to win the NFC South? I mean, that's not necessarily what this segment is about. We are going to look to the Tampa Bay Bucks against the Seahawks. I'm just going to double check. That is the Bucks at the Seahawks. 2-3-1 teams, Jason. I suppose the Tampa Bay Bucks, why I asked that question, is they absolutely have looked frisky through the first 3 weeks. I don't know if you wanted me to start off or for you to start off, but I guess, yeah, how are you feeling about either team? And let me know if you want me to go first.
Yeah, Bucks certainly have their challenges. It's just a conveyor belt of injuries right now for them. So interested here about the Bucks. So go on, Mark, get us going.
Well, no, do you know what it is? It's the place. I didn't know if I wanted to go offense or defense first, but I think the offense is different without Mike Evans. Now, he's not on IR, but we saw the team go 0-3 when he was out last year. They've just most recently gone 0-1 without him, and you're probably going to be missing him for this game as well. Of course, you do have Ibuka there, who didn't have a bad game by any stretch. He obviously put up a lot of yards the other day, but the defense is just different. And Baker Mayfield was able to say it afterwards. I don't have the exact wording in front of me of what he said, but it's just like, it's different. Teams play different. Teams know that Mike Evans is going down. I almost worry as a Cardinals fan that he's going to eclipse what Larry Fitzgerald has done in terms of just like, as he ages, he has just dad strength making up for maybe that he's losing a yard. We expect him to lose a yard an awful lot faster than is happening. So even though you get a guy like Chris Godwin back last week as well, I do think that the offense for the Bucks is different. And now you have to deal with the fact that Bucky Irving, the running back who's obviously doing the Lord's work and all, could be potentially missing. And like, there's tons of teams that are dealing with injuries. The Bucks are not worse off than anyone else. But I do think when you're talking about that hero ball that I keep on going on about, that I actually wanted to stay away from talking about on this podcast, but it's so relevant to the Bucks, because that hero ball from Baker Mayfield, because of all these one-score games that they're in, ends up with him tossing to Mike Evans because he's absolutely nails when it comes to those positions, to that type of the game. Yeah, I think that that's having an impact, and it's going to continue to have an impact. And it's a shame. Yeah, sorry, I was going to say it's a shame. It's not a shame. That's football. But the offense does look different because of those injuries.
I think part of why it's a shame is because we saw this last year as well. You know, Godwin and Evans were in and out with some bad injuries. So it's just a shame that it is football. But I do think, just from a fan perspective, it feels like we haven't been able to see this offense in full flight, as fun as they are and as much as the Mayfield heroics are to watch week in, week out. It is a shame that we haven't seen Evans, Godwin, McMillan, Egbuka, and now Bucky Irvin. I'm not sure if they, well, certainly not Egbuka, but I'm not sure if they all been on the field together much over the last 2 years, and it's a shame because clearly they're a capable team and they're an exciting team to watch. Tough challenge this week as well against the Seattle Seahawks. I'm willing to say that I think this Seahawks defense is the best they have had since the Legion of Boom days back in 2013, 2014 type era, which I can't believe, as I'm just thinking about it, is like 12 years ago, 13 years ago that Legion Boom came out. That's insane. Since 2017, the Seahawks have been outside the top 10 in total defense and scoring defense. Right now, it's only 4 weeks, but this Seahawks unit is putting up some league best numbers. Currently second in points allowed, 6th in sacks, 7th in takeaways. whether it's stopping the run, putting pressure on the quarterback, locking down wide receivers on the outside. This Seahawks defense is from low to mid to high level across the board. They are performing. Part of that is their depth. Look no further than the defensive back room right now. It's an embarrassment of riches. So much so that there's reports right now that the Seahawks might trade away Rick Woolen, who's still playing fantastic football for them at cornerback. But that's how many players they have back there right now that are showing up. Josh Jobe, cornerback, he started the season very well. Obviously, they have Weatherspoon. They even have a second-round pick, Nick Emmon-Maury. He played briefly in week 1. I think he got injured on the first drive of that game, but we haven't seen him since. He's a second-round pick safety that's going to be back this week. So at the back end, so much talent there. For the record, I don't think they should trade Rick Woolen. They're playing so well. Why mess with it? Why get a future draft pick when you look like a team that can win right now? But if you want to look up front as well, Byron Murphy II didn't have the numbers to back up what was a steady rookie season. He only had half a sack and I think 2 quarterback hits over 14 games as a rookie. But already through 4 weeks, Byron Murphy has 2.5 sacks, 16 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 5 quarterback hits. So whether it's stopping the run or putting the quarterback under duress, we're seeing guys like Byron Murphy excel as well at the moment. I think overall, when you look at this defensive unit, I think it is the driving force of Seattle, and that's not to diminish what they're doing on the other side of the ball, because Sam Darnold is certainly playing some good football as well. But in terms of the defense, their depth, their talent across the board right now, it's so strong, and I think it's only going upwards. It's a young team. They're going to still keep getting better as the season's going on. So the fact that they look so good right now, certainly in the short term, poses a big challenge to this Bucs offense.
And you're so right, and you've done that so well, Jason. Sometimes I think that it's ignored the fact that scheme makes massive players. I think that goes with what is happening potentially with that Shane Steichen offense in Indianapolis now that it's starting to click. It's been happening for a number of years now in Philadelphia. Obviously, anything that Sean McVay route or coaching tree was touching for a while, and you could say the same. It was just there were so many coaching trees that you wanted to be a part of. Mike McDonald coming over from Baltimore, obviously last year, he was such a hot commodity when he was the number one. Or say he was the number one wanted head coach that year or candidate available. He is making them into stars. Everyone that you're mentioning, it's like he's getting the best out of them. It's like that didn't look automatic at the top half of last season, so it has been a bit of a slow burner. It's like, it's not to forget that he's working absolute magic, and that's where it's like when you're talking about this is one of the best that they've had since the Legion of Boom, if not the best since they had the Legion of Boom. That's where I think it's frightening that it's like I don't expect this to drop off in the way that maybe I've shown some doubt with Shane Steichen's offense is great or whatever, but I think it's against. I'm not going to say, it's against a weaker schedule. That's not what I'm trying to get at, but it's a tougher argument to make for me. Whereas I just have so much faith in, I've seen Mike McDonald do it before and make so many stars. You've seen now that the Ravens defense, now it obviously had a year there last year that was okay, but I think it's starting to drop off now as they have to come up with their own bits. Whereas Mike McDonald was so involved for so long that, I think it's scary. I think you have to be extremely positive if you're the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe it makes sense for you to touch on the offense if you want, and I'll bounce back with some Bucs defense.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've some praises for the Seattle defense, and I think what they're doing on defense has ultimately put the Seattle offense in such a comfortable position. But that's not to speak down about how well they're playing on that side of the ball right now. The only 2 players I need to mention right now, I think, is Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith-Njigba, because there was a lot of doubt, me included. I probably said it 3 or 4 weeks ago. I remember saying I don't think this Sam Darnold experiment is going to work, because Geno Smith was so good at performing behind an O-line that was giving up a lot of pressure. Sam Darnold, not typically the best when under pressure. But the style of football they're playing right now, they're just making it look so comfortable. And a big part of that is Jackson Smith-Njigba's ability to just seemingly always be open and always catch the football when it comes to him. And Darnold, there's no doubt that he can make these throws. He's accurate when he has the time and when he can hit these guys in stride. We know what the offense can do. To take a step further, I would like to see the likes of Cooper Kupp. I know it's been a couple of years now since he's been playing at the level that we know he was capable of back in the day with the Rams. But it does feel like they can't solely rely on this connection between Darnold and Smith-Njigba. We'll be looking for a bit more diversity. Keep that running game going because it's going pretty steadily right now. But certainly the story of the Seahawks this season for me is the defense. As much as Sam Darnold does tend to get those headlines, I think it's so impressive what they're doing on the other side of the ball. And I think, just circle back about what I was talking about, when we talk about the Browns, we talk about Myles Garrett. And we talk about the Steelers, we talk about TJ Watt. What I really like about the Seahawks defense is that we're not shouting about a lot of star names. They do have great football players, don't get me wrong, but it's just so solid across the board. I think that's really what's impressive about them.
Yeah, wait until they get to the playoffs, then everyone will start saying, the names. That's where you really make a name for yourself. But you said about like two names that you have written down. It's like when I'm talking about the Bucs defense, of course, I had the exact same two names put down. You brought up Cooper Kupp, and it's funny because in terms of fantasy numbers, I got rid of him off my own fantasy team today because he's certainly not putting it up. And Sam Darnold, I suppose, isn't hitting those fantasy numbers that he was hitting last year as he led to the Minnesota Vikings to be a fantastic offense, especially in terms of the fantasy numbers. But that's not to say, even though he's not putting them up with Seattle right now, he's still going quietly about some very good business. Like you've alluded to, Jason, you weren't much of a believer. A lot of us thought, put him in a different system. Let's see how it goes. It probably won't go great. Obviously, JSN now is the number 2 in yards, and that's obviously being a massive connection for him. But I think here's the best test that Darnold has seen this season. I mean, it is, per PFF, the best defense that he's gone against. And I think it's going to really show, can he read the defense? Because we know so well that Todd Bowles loves to just hide where he's bringing this pressure from. You could see 7 guys at the line and then 3 of them are going to drop back. I think that that's where the test is going to come from. Tampa Bay is giving up the 4th fewest yards, and it is in those situations where maybe it's at the goal line or otherwise where it's got that Sam Darnold's going to have to step up and make the big boy throw and everything that goes along with it. So I think what you're saying in that you're a big believer in the defense. I am too. Am I a big believer in the offense? I don't think either of us are committing. We're saying we like what we see, but I think against a top 10 ranked unit like this, I think it's number 9 per PFF. I could be wrong in that. I believe it is. I think that this is a nice little test, especially got a 4-1. That's the whole thing, isn't it? It's like we've just seen how fickle our league is when we go to the Dublin game, and the 3-1 Steelers now are on top of the world, and we're talking about playoffs. If they'd given up that drive at the end, you're probably willing to say, oh no, they stink and they can't hang on to a game. I'm excited to see this game. And again, you were the one that put the show together this week, and I think that it was an absolutely appropriate one because it just feels like big implications. I mean, I don't have the Seahawks are obviously leading the division, right?
I think the Niners have it right now. Well, there's 3 teams at 3-1. Niners, Rams, and Seahawks. So they're all neck and neck. I think Niners have some form of tiebreaker right now. But yeah, I think in terms of who needs this win more, I think you've got to say Seattle just for that reason. Our Buccaneers going to really be pushed hard by the likes of the Falcons or Panthers or Saints. Certainly not as much as the NFC West, which is the Wild West right now. So in these close 50-50 matchups, I think Seattle have to keep winning them if they're going to be have a chance at winning the division.
And that's it with the Bucs. Like every single week so far, it's been a 1-score game. 3-point winners against the Falcons, 1 point against the Texans, 2 points against the Jets. That doesn't bode too well. But then we talked about it was a 6-point game against the Eagles over the weekend. They go and face a gauntlet, though, the Bucs themselves, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Lions, the next 3 games. Like we were just saying there, like within the NFC West, have to play the Seahawks this week, the 49ers the week after that. We're going to know an awful lot more about, I suppose, both teams, but in the immediate future, I do think we don't obviously do picks. I think that the Seahawks get this game, but then again, that's the whole thing. If the Bucs are able to overcome it, it's like, well, at 4-1, you're winning that NFC South.
Yeah, it's in Seattle. I think that's always a big factor. We know how loud that stadium can get. I think that, coupled with the health of the Buccaneers, I think they still have a few lingering injuries along that O-line. At least they got Tristan Wirfs back. That's a massive player to get back last week. I think this week I'd be leaning towards the Seahawks, certainly.
Right enough. I will throw up a couple more comments. I do see one from Mickey. As you bring up your headache, I do not have my headache written out, so I'll just have to throw back my my poor graphic that says London is calling in the. I would love to know what Mark Hogan of 5 hours ago was thinking when he wrote where are my comments gone here, because there was a couple more. I am trying to get rid of them apparently. Mickey said earlier on, feels like every team would have a big Irish American following that would come over every year. Yeah, it definitely seemed that. We were talking about that in section 1, and sorry I've had to wait so long to wrap around to your comment. If you do have any more guys coming in, get them in now, because we're going to wrap up the podcast, the live side of it at least, now shortly. Yeah, that definitely was the appeal for a lot of people that I spoke to anyway. I actually went out, Jason. I've taken a few Mondays off here for the next while because of traveling, because like I've alluded to, I hate doing the owl over and back thing. And I went out for a pint on Monday just to kind of embrace or kind of like reflect on what had just happened. There was a lot of there was a lot of meeting up with different people and, you know, wanting to experience it with as many different people as I could, that I took a second for myself and I bumped into, I have his number on my phone now, a man and a wife that had come over from Pittsburgh. And it was that destination holiday that we are told about beforehand. You know, like I was on News Talk a couple of hours before we went in for the game. And I was saying it on News Talk to Anton Savage, saying I really believe the number that you'd given out by the commissioner, 30% had come over versus normally it's 10%. It definitely seemed like that was the case. And then Mickey actually followed up with another one, beating big teams and still got some doubters is crazy. I don't know, Mickey, are you an Eagles fan? But that did definitely come through while we were talking about the Eagles. Jason, looking at your headache, if anyone wants to get the last of the comments in, what's your headache for this week?
I've gone with a very obvious one this week. I think the person with a headache is John Harbaugh. This Ravens team are interesting. We kind of have to, I think we should touch on them in some capacity. They've got the Texans and the Rams next. They're 1-3. Lamar Jackson's got a hamstring injury. And it's looking like he might be sitting out till after a bye week in a few weeks. Could this Ravens team go 1-5? Is this a possibility? You mentioned how much that defense is struggling. So now couple that with the fact that Lamar Jackson is gone. John Harbaugh, fantastic head coach. He's done so much for that team. In terms of having his work cut out for him, I think Ravens are up against it right now, more so than ever. That said, even in this scenario, if the Ravens go 1-5 and they're getting Lamar Jackson back afterwards, I think if they go 1-4, their percent of making the playoffs is something like 3%. If they go 1-5, it drops under 1%. Despite that, I would not write off this Ravens team, even if they do somehow lose these next 2 weeks and they're going to get Lamar Jackson back. The teams they've lost to so far have been some of the best in the league, you know, the Lions, the Chiefs, and the Bills. If they start 1-5, I could see them rattling off 6 or 7 straight right away. But what is clear is that at some point, John Harbaugh is going to have to turn this around because right now they're in a position that they haven't been in a long time in terms of starting so unsteadily.
My headache was actually, it is related to you and me kind of, but geez, I already hear myself saying, oh, it's the Cardinals. It kind of is the Cardinals, but it was kind of looped in with just running backs. The whole seem to be going down right now. I mean, we said Boogie Irving might be missing some time. Chuba Hubbard is day to day. We've lost the likes of Aaron Jones and James Conner. Trey Benson went down for the Cardinals today. I was kind of thinking, Jason, just almost wanted to and again, obviously we're Cardinals fans, but when a Cardinals offense is based heavily on a strong run game, it is tough to be down so quickly to running backs 3 and 4. Like, it was actually, we were recording, Michael and I, last Wednesday or Thursday, something for CBS. One of the most random partnerships is that we had to, or CBS had reached out to Michael, and I was doing the video, and met this really cool guy. I should have his name there in front of me, but I don't. An Irish Cardinals fan. He's moving to Australia next year. Best of luck to him. And he was, this was before the Thursday Night Football game, and I was like, oh, there's such a drop off between, going from James Conner to Trey Benson, or James Conner and Trey Benson, to go to DeMarcado and Trey Benson, which now becomes DeMarcado and Michael Carter. And it just seems like tough luck to go from a really solid 1-2 punch that people are like, oh, Trey Benson could be your number one. And I was kind of anticipating a breakout. He gets in for 1 week, and now we're down to the 3 and 4. Bam Knight is there as well as the number 5 guy, which I think in fantasy a couple of years ago now, and put up some numbers. But I don't know, it just feels like a bit kind of stinks for the Cardinals staff to, lose a major piece of their offense.
1 hour 24 minutes into the podcast before we mentioned the Arizona Cardinals. That is impressive for a podcast that's not featuring Michael. I completely agree. And, this Cardinals running game was struggling even before James Conner went down, before Trey Benson went down. So to have a guy like DeMarcado, who's functional as a pass catcher, Michael Carter, he hasn't played much. He's shown flashes in preseason, but it's not a guy you'll like to be relying on. I would be surprised if the Cardinals go try find someone in free agency if they haven't already done so, because they'll be shopping around straight away. Problem first and foremost needs to be that offensive line and actually creating some space for the running backs, because even James Conner back there was going nowhere. So as a whole, this Cardinals offense is in a very, very tough space right now, I feel.
Yeah, I'm going to forgive us for mentioning, because I'm just thinking there off the top of my head, we did 3 divisions that we rattled through now the NFC North pretty fast, but we did give a mention in some way, shape, or form to the AFC East and NFC East teams. So that's going to be 8. I'm going to give Daire a good talk about the Lions and Packers. That brings us up to 10. We talked Vikings, Steelers, Browns, Bucks, and Seahawks is another 5. Then you got so we've talked over half of these. That's 17 teams. God forbid there's a 50-50 chance that the Cardinals come up when there's 100% of this podcast is represented by Cardinals fans. No, that was one that was able to come up. Jason, we had the weekend of a lifetime. I hope now it's going to be the same for anyone that's going over to the international games, which obviously the 3-game stint. Then I think it's a 2-week break before we go to, is it first Berlin and then Madrid? I'm pretty sure that is how it goes. Of course, we're going to try and focus on, because we know obviously people this side of the pond, of course, think it's, or find it much easier to see their teams in London and Germany and Spain than potentially going over to see it in the US. So we'll continue to look at those international fixtures as they come over the next few weeks. Of course, on the screen right now, Virgin Media 2 will have free-to-air coverage of the Vikings versus Browns from 2 p.m. on Sunday. And I remember the word, in the Republic. That's what it was. In the Republic, Virgin Media 2. I do not know off the top of my head who has they covered. I presume it's ITV, but Channel 5, I don't actually know. But I'm so glad that I've stumbled into remembering in the Republic. Again, I'm so privileged to be on the show this week. Michael is going to be there with me. There is a couple of other people going to be joining. I am not, even though I'm aware who one of the names is, it is not yet public, so I will not announce their news for them. But we're really excited. So if you are listening to this, and especially, I should have said this off the top of the show, but especially if you're listening in still, please, if you could give us a watch. It is going to be a user like a listener, or a watcher, an audience driven show. I believe there is a production meeting that I still have to take part in later on this week, that we do want to hear from people that are listening in. Look, I understand that we will also be approaching new fans, and part of that will mean that we do have to explain a few bits more. If you've been listening to this podcast, I hope that you understand that the likes of me and Jason and Michael, do know it to a greater level, then potentially we might have to talk about. I don't know if I'm going to have to be explaining exactly what a quarterback is, but I know that sometimes when I'm on radio to more of the masses, I explain a bit more in depth what even a wide receiver has to do, i.e. catching the ball. So don't hammer us for that, or do hammer us for that. Get in touch. We just need to get your get those metrics up. Oh, there's so many people texting in. All right. But no, Jason, any final words on your Dublin experience and looking forward to London?
Yeah, it's one for the books. A lot of memories made. A lot of cool people met, including many of our loyal listeners. It's, we often mention, and Michael mentions how much hard work we all put in to get those shows going, and what really makes it worth it is when all the people come and then you can have a chat with them afterwards and have a pint, because our listeners are just such good crack, such good people, and it's the connecting with all of you guys over the weekend is really what made it special in my mind. And just to yourself, Mark, said it to Mick last week when he made his announcement. I'll say it again to you: no more deserving man. You're going to kill it, and look, you've earned every break you've got. So it's huge that we have these free tier games now in Ireland, and I think you're going to do a great job. So enjoy it.
Yeah, and again, like, it's something, and thank you so much. It's something that we would have wanted, whether we're involved or not. We've often said that it's the time to strike and throw the doors open to a few more fans, and a few more fans helps us all out because there's more exposure. I don't know. I'm not saying that, but of course, like, if there's bigger budgets, then because more ads, then we can get bigger guests on the show again. I think we'd be happy enough with, I think we're putting on a good show now on Virgin Media now this week, and again, so happy to be involved. But yeah, like you said, Jason, I guess we have to shout out as well the weekend that just was. We got to shout out Rob Mahon from Ger Mahon's and Kennedy's, my new favorite pub, also owned by the family. Spent some time there. Got to see Max Starks putting his points, and I presume if you check out Ger Mahon's, well, it mightn't be up yet, but it's on the way. Yeah, shout out Rob, shout out John, shout out everyone. We were well looked after. Radisson Blue did a great job as well. The boys there, I don't know them by name, but I know I like talking to them or whatever. Yeah, so of course, sign off for Jason Hayes, Mark Hogan. We will be back next week. Again, please engage with whatever Virgin Media number is put up on your screen now on Sunday. And yeah, we'll talk to y'all next week. So Jason, goodbye and goodbye. Thanks for listening.